Planning Committee together this morning. I always have a hard time getting through that. It's July 21. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting? Supervisor McGowan. And a second? Supervisor Hogan. Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Seeing that, the motion's passed. Moving on, I'm going to move to the agenda, but very quickly, I want to just give a quick update on some of the things that are happening from my front. First and foremost, you probably all know that Mark Bean has been working with the Economic Recovery Group, primarily with communication and our advertising investments. The group is moving towards identifying a way to measure the effectiveness of our spend. So there's been a subcommittee that's been defined, and what we'll be looking for is what do we want to measure, and once we identify what we want to measure in terms of our advertising, the effectiveness, then we'll move forward with how to measure it. So I think that's a really big thing. The second point along those lines is, and this is something I forgot to mention in our board meeting, Lake George's hiring. I mentioned that there's a big need for staff in our tourism industry, not just tourism, but across the board, our whole economy. I wanted to just make sure, and hopefully the Post-Star is here to see this, but all the industries and all the businesses that are open now should have signed a safety pledge. And the whole idea is to keep our guests and our employees safe. So if there's concern about safety, I think they need to look deeper into the controls that the businesses have put in place. Everybody wants to keep their employees safe, and we really need people to come back to work. So that's my little soapbox message today. Moving on, we'll have a discussion from Liza about workforce development, Sarah on, hopefully if Sarah's here, I can't tell for sure, on the census, and a little update about an email that I sent last night about broadband. So with that, I'm going to move on to Liza and the agenda items. Thank you, Liza.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. It's good to see everybody. Thanks for having me. I have 2 resolution requests this morning, and then I'm happy to share some employment updates afterwards. The first resolution request is to appoint a new member to the Workforce Development Board. Our representative from Fort William Henry resigned June 10th, and we thought it would still be great to have a hospitality representative replace him. So the request this morning is to appoint Zachary Moore to the Workforce Development Board.
Down, thank you for the motion. A second, Mr. Leggett.
Second.
Liza, who is Zachary Moore?
Thank you, Supervisor, for asking. I did share with you his resume, but he represents Spruce Hospitality Group, which owns Queensbury Hotel, Fairfield Inn, I believe, and some other hospitality business.
I know who he is. Thank you.
Questions? Seeing none. Oh, Supervisor Hogan.
Morning. Thank you, Chairman. I support Zachary. His resume looked great. I just want to encourage you to continue to look for an in-park representative for that board.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hogan. Chairman, if you don't mind if I respond to that.
Absolutely.
We will have another appointee next month, and we do have some wonderful options from the park area. And I did emphasize to Mike Biddle to make sure that he spoke with you as well about some of those options to make sure that your voice was heard.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's passed. Liza?
Thank you. And my second request, and I'm sorry for it being a little last minute, as I know it feels like I've been here 3 years because the pandemic's felt like 3 years, but I've only been here 8 months, and this is my first time doing the summer contracts. So my second request is to have our BOCES contract renewed for the task class, which is the GED equivalent class, so that we could start in September if BOCES is ready to go. And that contract would go through June of 21. The only thing that I have updated on the contract, different from last year, is the option for offering it remotely, which we were able to do some remote learning between March and June with our task students. And so that's the only thing that I've added in the contract that's different than last year. Originally, I thought I had to do a request for bids for this, but in the fine print of the terms and the schedule, it said that after the contract was renewed last year, we are able to just to renew it for another 2 years on an annual basis. So I apologize for the last minute request, and I appreciate your grace. And as we're trying to get as many things back open and back running for our young people especially, but also keeping in mind we just got the governor's guidance for education in the last few weeks, and that also had an impact on us being able to renew this contract with BOCES and move forward.
So I'd
Bring it
like
to
to
the
have a
floor.
motion to bring this to the floor. Is that Supervisor Leggett? A second? Aye. Supervisor Hogan, thank you. Discussion.
Amanda.
Ms. Seaver has a question.
Thank you. Liza, I'm just wondering, this is entitled an agreement for training and services between the county and BOCES. Is this the complete contract or is there a supplemental? I mean, I appreciate all the information. I just want to make sure I'm referring to the right place.
You should have the complete contract with you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Leggett. A question?
Nothing. No.
Any other questions from the committee?
Oh, I do. Is this a reimbursable or do we get the money up front?
So we pay BOCES for the class, and it is reimbursable through our WIOA grant.
Thank you.
Any other questions before? So let's call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's passed. Liza, anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to share some updates with the committee, if that's okay.
As long as we get done by 9:30.
Absolutely, I'll be brief. So I did want to thank you all again for supporting Summer Youth Employment Program. I'm happy to report that Operation Food Chain kicked off yesterday with training and safety guidelines as those youth are preparing meals that officially go out today. So we're excited that Operation Food Chain is off the ground. The other work sites begin next week. As predicted, we have about half the youth as we normally do. So we have around 20 youth instead of around 40. But we're very grateful for the 11 work sites that we have confirmed, 9 of which have youth directly assigned to them right now. And we're in better shape than a lot of other counties who had work sites that were hesitant to sign on. So we're grateful for that. And again, appreciate the support from all of you for the Summer Youth Employment Program. Any youth who are ineligible for the Summer Youth Employment Program, we're encouraging them to apply for the other jobs that exist in our area. And we refer them to the LakeGeorgesHiring.com website and offer assistance in other ways. The feedback I'm hearing from a lot of folks is that the young workers are really helpful right now. And so we're trying to make sure we're recruiting more youth for these jobs, the overwhelming number of jobs that we have in our hospitality industry specifically. The jobs that we're seeing the most right now are for housekeepers and line cooks. That's the biggest challenge that we're having trouble filling. Definitely there's other jobs in other industries, but those are the most that we're seeing right now that we're having a difficult time filling. The unemployment numbers are scheduled to be out today by region. We saw that it went up slightly for the state from 14.5 to 15.7%. We're hoping that for our region it continues to go down as it did from April to May as we went through the phases for reopening. And so hopefully today I'll have more numbers, or definitely this week I'll have more numbers for our region. For Capital Region, for Warren County, and for Glens Falls area. And then the other thing I've been doing is making sure the Department of Labor folks their rapid response team, when businesses are closing in other areas, that they're referring those employees to our area. I let DOL know we have plenty of jobs up here. So we're casting a wider net to get more workers to come to our area. And we are still concerned about the extra $600 payment, which is scheduled to end on July 26th for New York State, because that is the last Sunday. That's this Sunday, actually, that New Yorkers can claim for unemployment for the extra $600. So other states go through the end of July through July 31st. Ours actually ends July 26th. So New York residents will not be able to claim for that last week of July. We know that our area is unique. We know a lot of other places don't have as many jobs as we have open. And the unemployment need may be greater, unemployment insurance need may be greater in other areas, but here we really need our community to return to work if they are able to. So we'll see what happens with Congress and Senate, if they can agree or not about extending any uninsurance, the extra enhanced uninsurance, that's just $600, or if they'll do something that is more about cost of living for each area, or only, you know, capping it off at what their previous employer was paying them. Extended benefits have there are extended benefits, though, lengthwise, long term. So when people exhaust their 26 weeks of unemployment, they'll now be eligible, maybe eligible to extend that up to 52 or 59 weeks, depending on what they qualify for. That would not extend the amount of unemployment they receive, but the amount of time that they could be receiving unemployment insurance. And that was new as of this month as well, in July.
Liza, briefly, do you have any insight in terms of starting wage movement?
No, there's a lot of talk about it, but it's just talk. Nothing definite. We know that minimum wage goes up to $12.50 on December 31st of this year. And so we're planning ahead for that. And also we started with that rate for our summer youth for this summer, because that's what their rate will be next summer as well. But we know that's a challenge for businesses, and we hope that some federal funding can help businesses and local municipalities to support workers more instead of the businesses having to.
Thank you, Liza. Any other questions for Liza before we move on? Hearing none, I saw Wayne. I see Wayne, and I'm not sure if Sarah is on, but can we get a brief update on the census? I see Sarah.
Okay, so I was wondering if I can share my screen.
It's fine with me.
Okay, somebody needs to give me permission to do it.
I think that might be Amanda or Tammy.
Okay.
She has permission.
Okay. Yep. Thanks. I see it. Just got permission here. Okay. Can everybody see this?
That's great.
Okay. So I just wanted to go through a brief update on what's happening with census operation, and then talk a little bit about response rates and statistics. So right now we're in the final push of the self-response period. The census will officially, it was extended to October 31st, so it will officially end October 31st. The self-response period will end at the end of this month, although people can still respond to the census themselves all the way through the end of October. But starting August 11th, enumerators will start to go out into the field and visit households who have not responded to the census. That will be wearing masks, and they will not go in houses. They will only go to the doorstep. And we know that there's likely to be concern about getting visits from census employees. So we want to do a big final push here to try to get as many people to self-respond as possible over the next few coming weeks before we move into the enumeration phase. The enumerators have begun to be trained. The first class went through their training in Glens Falls last week. And Glens Falls, I think they were going to do their class in the gazebo and then moved into the Queensberry Hotel. But we've been able to get a couple, the Queensberry Hotel was very nice and volunteering their space. So those classes will continue to go forward as we move into this next phase. And again, the census will end October 31st. So I just am now going to go through a few maps of response rates here. So this first one that we're seeing is the current response rates as of a couple days ago. Let me see here. Oh, I think unfortunately, sorry, I'm doing this on a different laptop because I don't have a webcam on my other computer, and it's not letting me turn off the various different layers. So I apologize for that. It's kind of throwing me for a loop here. But anyway, our current response rates, as of a couple of days ago, we can see the darker areas have a higher response rate, and the lighter areas have a lower response rate. So we're doing fairly well in Glens Falls and Queensberry. The white outlined number there is the 2010 response rate, and the black number is the current 2020 response rate. So you can see in almost all areas of the county, we're lagging that 2010 response rate, which is not ideal. At a very minimum, I think we want to try to get up to our 2010 response rate at a minimum. So I think these various towns that you can see in the lighter colors, I think, we want to, and I have one here that's the Gap, but I'm just the way this got set up, it's causing me problems not to be able to see this. So again, I apologize for that. I'll send everybody a link after the meeting too with this, because I had this series of 5 maps here with various different shading. So as far as the Gap, I'm just going to tell you verbally the areas that where we have the largest gap between the 2010 and 2020 response rate: Johnsburg, Stony Creek, Thurman, the town of Lake George, and Ward 1 in Glens Falls. So those areas are trailing the 2010 response rate fairly significantly by at least 10% or more. Areas that are doing well are the town of Lake Luzerne. The town of Lake Luzerne had a fairly low response rate for 2010, and they've met that response rate. They've matched it currently. So it would still be good if they got their response rate up, but they have at least matched their 2010 response rate. And the area in Queensberry, West Mountain area is doing really fantastically well. They've got a response rate of over 80%, which is the highest in the county. So good job for West Mountain area. Northern Queensberry is also doing fairly decently. And Ward 2 in Glens Falls is also doing really well as far as, meeting or exceeding the 2010 response rate. So great job in those areas. Again, need to do some work in Stony Creek, Thurman, Johnsburg, Bolton. Chester, Warrensburg, and East Queensberry are also lagging quite a bit, 8 to 10%. They're lagging the 2010 rate. So again, those are areas of focus. Another thing that I had in this map that I wanted to show was just an analysis I had done of seasonal housing units. So when we get those response rates from the census, if you look at, the response rates that I've been sending out every month or so, or look at the response rate mapper on the census website, those, the denominator for that number, that percentage, is the total number of housing units in each town. So the towns that have a high percentage of seasonal housing units are sort of by necessity going to be showing a very low response rate. So what I wanted to do is take that into account and figuring out how really are our seasonal towns doing response-wise, taking that into account, the fact that in many towns, 50% or more of the housing units are seasonal. So again, I had a nice little color-coded map, and I'll send that out afterwards. But I think as we are aware, Bolton, Horicon, and Hague have a really high percentage of seasonal housing units. Over 60% of the housing units in those towns are seasonal. Chester and Johnsburg are both around 50% of housing units that are seasonal. Lake George and the northern area of Queensbury along the lake there are in the 40s as far as seasonal housing units. Lake Luzerne and Warrensburg are in the 30s. Stony Creek and Thurman are in the 20s. So if we take those into account, it makes the response rates not look quite as terrible for Bolton, Hague, and Horicon. But still, at the minimum, we need to get up to at least our 2010 response rate. So another thing I did is take the response rates for each town and factor in the seasonality of the housing units, and then also factor in the population. So in this final push, we can figure out where we're going to get the most bang for our buck as far as outreach. So for instance, wards in Glens Falls may have a much higher response rate than Hague, but the population of those wards in Glens Falls is so much higher than in our towns that have a high seasonal population. So putting some extra effort in outreach into those towns with a higher population, even though they may also have a currently higher response rate, is going to give us more bang for our buck. So I classified the towns based on that formula that I came up with, and kind of came up with some ideas as where we want to really focus this last push of outreach efforts. Obviously, we want all of the towns to continue to push census response. But these areas of higher bang for our buck, I guess we'll call it, definitely wards 1 and 4 in Glens Falls, kind of central Queensbury area, and then Lake Luzerne and Warrensburg and Lake George.
Sarah?
Yeah?
Does the Census Bureau indicate to us individuals or addresses that have not yet responded? Do we have access to that information?
No, that is not public information. So that is all, and in fact, the housing, the list of addresses itself is also protected by Title 13. So we had brief access to that when we were updating the address list in the spring of last year, but that is protected confidential information.
But that is what the enumerators will use, right?
Yes, the enumerators will have access to that information. So tomorrow we're going to do a boosted social media post. So it will go out to all county residents on Facebook and Instagram, letting them know about the in-person enumeration process starting August 11th, and encouraging them to self-respond, especially if they don't want somebody showing up on their doorstep.
Just trying to think of, possible role for elected officials, town board members. Maybe it would make sense. I mean, there's nobody that knows their residents better than those who are elected by them, and who the influential people in the neighborhoods are. Maybe let's start calling them and say, tell all your friends to make sure you get back on the census.
Yeah, so we have a couple of options that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, the major challenge of this census has been that we haven't been able to hold events. We had a lot of events scheduled. The Census Bureau typically holds events to encourage outreach, to encourage people to participate and also to collect information for somebody who, set up a booth at a craft fair and somebody can walk up and they'll have an enumerator there to help them complete the census right then and there. That kind of stuff hasn't been able to happen this year, unfortunately, but the Census Bureau is making available something they're calling mobile questionnaire assistance centers. These were initially going to be just deployed by the Census Bureau to wherever they felt like they would make sense. However, because of the COVID situation, the Census Bureau is requiring that local entities request a mobile assistance center. So if you do have an event, if you have a food drive, we've been reaching out to, we recently had a complete count committee meeting and, had brainstormed some ideas and upcoming events where we may be able to have one of these mobile questionnaire assistance centers. But if somebody has an event or an area where people are gathering regularly in their town and they would like to have the Census Bureau come set up a booth, they would be happy to do that. They need a specific request with a specific day, time, and location, and just a rough estimate as to how many people they think may attend. We're going to set one of these up in front of the library, in front of Crandall Library, during book pickup area, and also hopefully we'll just get people walking around downtown. We've had a couple other options too, a couple of which haven't panned out because the organizers felt hesitant about it. But if anybody has any ideas for deploying one of these mobile questionnaire assistance centers, please get in touch with me and I can give you more details. And we do still have a lot of hard copy materials that we're happy to distribute too. And phone calls, of course, are a great idea, as Ryan just mentioned. So if anybody has phone lists, has volunteers willing to make phone calls and encourage response, that would be great. And I think has proven to be effective in other areas. So.
What about the school lunch program? Is that still going on right now?
Yes. So we have had various different schools distribute materials through the school lunch program, and we are going to reach out to them again, and also the ones that didn't participate the first time around and get additional materials sent out again with the summer lunches.
Any other questions for Sarah? Supervisor Leggett?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sarah, what did you say the percentage of seasonal was for the town of Chester?
It is, and this is just a rough estimate. This is not from the Census Bureau. This is me using parcel data, but it's approximately 48%. So that means that your target response, if you got 100% responding housing units in your town, would be 52%. Right now you're at 37.6%. So, estimating that seasonal housing unit percentage gives you like your ceiling, which is a great goal. If you could reach, if you could reach 48%, you'd be doing great.
Sarah?
Thank you.
Mike, this is Peter McDevitt.
I'm sorry.
Sarah, just a quick comment. I actually did my census questionnaire this morning about 5 a.m. I think I was on Facebook and got notified, and it said it would take 5 minutes, and for me it probably took 10 minutes, but it was very painless, easy to fill out. So I live in Ward 2 in Glens Falls, and you mentioned that that was a good participation type ward. So thank you for that. But again, the Facebook was extremely painless in filling it out. So thank you.
Good to hear.
Thank you, Sarah. Just briefly, if you don't mind, if the census were to end today, what percentage of population drop do you see in the county?
I think it would be fairly substantial. So I think we have some hurdles. You know, we have a lower response rate than we did in 2010. We have a lower response rate than the state's response rate. We have a lower response rate than the federal response rate. And we have a rural population who's going to be wary of people coming to their houses. So, you know, I can't put a figure on it, but I would expect a drop for sure.
Would you say 20%, 30%? Could you just, no one's going to hold
No, I don't think it would be that high. I mean, the Census Bureau is definitely, you know, they're going to make every attempt to reach every household. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't want to say what percentage because I really don't know. I'm not a statistician and I just don't want to misspeak. But
Sure.
I think we're not in great shape.
Just a reminder for everyone, we get a substantial amount of state and federal funding based on our census.
Yes,
And
a
that
huge
means
amount.
Programs for the needy, programs in general. So it's very important that we try to get all the responses that we can and fairly get represented when it comes time to sharing the wealth. So any other questions for Sarah moving forward? Hearing that, thank you, Sarah, I appreciate it. And I'd like to apologize.
Chairman Wild.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Dan Bruno. I did have a question
Okay.
for Sarah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I missed it. Could you tell me what was the percentage in Ward 4 in Glens Falls?
As far as the current response rate,
Yeah, right.
it is 54.4%. So it's lower than 3 of the other wards in Glens Falls. So definitely Ward 4 and Ward 1 are main target areas in Glens Falls. We have been working with the Open Door, and I believe they're going to try to do a mobile questionnaire assistance center too at the food site there. To try to address Ward 1. So if there's some sort of event that is happening in Ward 4, which I know is a really difficult situation.
Yeah, I just wondered if, you know, there's the Village Green complex and LaRose Gardens. If it was possible, there's a lot of people there that you could, you know, get all at once if it was possible, or maybe you have set up one of these mobile units at both locations.
Yeah, that was our thought initially too. And we were planning to move forward with that. But I've had a couple conversations with Bob Landry, and he is just feeling very concerned about the ability to pull that off safely, because all the safety situation would be on the event host. So the Census Bureau is basically just showing up, setting up a table, and having an enumerator or two, but making sure that that's safe would be on Bob Landry. And he felt uncomfortable being put in that position, understandably.
Sure.
But good idea. And, you know, obviously in any other year, we would have been doing those all along.
Sure. All right. I'll talk to Bob Landry. I work with him a lot and know him very well. Just, you know, feel him out a little bit more. But thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome. Sarah, if I could just ask you to stop sharing your screen so I can see others.
Yep.
And any other questions for Sarah? And I apologize to the following committees for going over, but the census is important. Brad, Supervisor McGowan. You're on mute, Brad. We have to do it quickly.
Where it is.
Time,
Hey, Sarah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was, I mailed mine in. I mean, it wasn't that hard. And the ones that I saw, I reminded people, make sure that I just don't understand how hard it was just to fill out a few questions there and drop it back in the mail. It wasn't that much money. And and as I stated to everybody, I was quite involved in building the old census back in 2010. So I got really familiar with how the census works and that, and it's quite a process, and the amount of people that they use that go out and bang on doors, especially in the North Country, and some of the stories you hear them when they come back of what happened when they were out there. So really, whatever we can do to just remind people, I've seen the signs out with the census. I know we've really tried, and it's so important. And with everybody home, there really shouldn't be an excuse that our numbers aren't, on par. So thank you, Sarah, for that. That was quite a crunch of numbers you put together for us. So.
Thank you, Supervisor McGowan. Without objection, I'd like to move forward. Mr. Lamont.
I just have one quick thing I'd ask the committee to consider. In our discussions with our state representatives for a number of our grants, which would be expiring this year or early next year, there's been a verbal commitment that due to the issues surrounding the virus and the pandemic, that they understand that a lot of programs won't be completed within their contract timelines, and that there should be an extension. We have not seen anything official on that, and we have a number of programs that we have some concerns about being able to spend down due to work constraints and distancing requirements and all the other issues. So if any of the committee members or members of the board have a chance to have discussions with Assemblyman Steck or Senator Little, we just encourage you to keep bringing that up, that there are various issues with state contracts that, we appreciate consideration of extensions given the issues going on today. So I just wanted to bring that up to the committee, and hopefully that can translate into conversations with the elected representatives.
Thank you, Wayne. I will take that up with Administrator Moore to figure out the best way to go about that. Amanda, this is Mike. Next time, when we think we need 30 minutes, I always need more. But I'm going to keep on moving forward, and I apologize for this, but at the last minute, there was a suggestion based on Senator Little's comments during our board meeting about broadband. And I believe everyone on the committee should have received my email from last night. That's a copy of the letter that Betty and Dan signed, as well as other representatives, requesting the governor to rescind his fees for broadband along state highways. So I was just curious what the pleasure of the committee might be in terms of whether we want to support this, whether we'd like to do something along the lines of another letter. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks, Chairman. Actually, I'll defer to Supervisor Hogan because I know this is very impactful to her community.
First off, I didn't get the email, but Supervisor Bramer very kindly forwarded me her version. I absolutely support us writing and sending a letter to as many people as we possibly can opposing this tax. This letter, however, I don't like the language in it. I don't think it's very clear. Well, I've only had a minute to digest it, but I think
I took a photo of it and texted it to her, so it was not very.
I think we could do better, is what I'm saying.
And Andrea, I'm sorry. You were first on my list when I was doing the distribution list, so I'm not sure how it missed you. But Amanda, I'm sorry, I see your hands up.
Mr. Simpson has questions, and Mr. Diamond had a question as well.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, there's been a great effort by New York State to expand broadband in North Country. These fees for broadband fiber within the state right-of-way, they start out at $200 a linear foot, all the way up to $549 a linear foot. If there isn't a disincentive towards expanding broadband in our North Country, as bad as this, I haven't seen one. This is just counterintuitive to expanding our communication efforts in the North Country. And, you know, telemed is depending on good, reliable broadband infrastructure along with our distance learning education. And through this COVID pandemic, all of these issues have risen to the forefront. I would ask this committee to please consider drafting a resolution opposing this tax and asking the governor to rescind this.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't read the email that you sent out yet, but I certainly will respond to that. But on a separate subject, I do have some questions before you close this meeting up in regards to economic growth. So I hope you save me a couple of minutes so I can share my questions with you.
I will definitely do that. I'm already over time, but let's move forward.
I'd like to get my questions in.
I'll make sure I don't forget, Jack. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks, Chairman Wild. I just want to pop back to the broadband thing. I would agree with Supervisor Hogan that a letter could be drafted in a little bit different fashion. So I'd like to make a motion that she and I work on putting one together for a resolution for the county to consider.
If I could be so bold, could I ask that Supervisor Simpson be part of that also, just because of his long history with the APA and working with this issue, or not the APA, but the AA, what is it? The Adirondack Association of Towns and Villages, AATV. Would that be all right?
If you want to be so bold, that's fine with me.
If Mr. Simpson agrees.
I'll second the motion.
Thanks, Craig.
We have a motion. Do we need it? Do we need an approval for that?
Are we?
Sure.
All right, so let's call the question for a motion to have Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Hogan, and Supervisor Simpson draft a letter and return it to this committee for approval and sent to the state.
Actually, Chairman, I was thinking that it would be a resolution out of the county
Okay.
that we could then forward on like we normally do to all of our electeds.
So is that something?
Okay with you, Andrea?
Mm-hmm.
Would we? Okay. We're not capable of doing that today, right?
No, but I also don't think that it's super time sensitive.
Okay.
I mean, we need to get it up to the governor's office in order to get that fee.
It's can you get something to me a week? Maybe we can just jump on with another meeting later this month and get it in front of the full board next month.
Yeah, I'd love to get it in front of the board. Yep. Okay.
Amanda?
One comment, Mr. Chairman, one comment. In the future, would you please, Mr. Chairman, in the future, would you please send the information to the full board? I mean, we're sitting here, 14 members of the board without ever seeing what you sent to the committee last night. So
Supervisor Beatty, it went to the committee first. It would happen late last night. I didn't send it to the full board of supervisors. And everybody gets tons of emails, and I think that was my privilege, and I'll try to do better next time.
Yeah, try to do better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Amanda Allen, please. Amanda?
You have questions from Mr. Simpson and Ms. Sieber.
Supervisor Sieber.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to
Ward 1.
explain that the legislature is going back to session for 4 days. There is a time sensitive issue here.
Well, it has to go through the full board if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think we can do anything faster than next month. Supervisor Sieber. And then
Thanks,
Amanda.
Mike. I know in other circumstances, our chairman of the board, not chairman of a committee, but chairman of the board have sent on with our county administrator and other interested parties letters on behalf of the board. So if in fact it is time sensitive, and I'm sure Supervisor Simpson can give me more of those details, perhaps our chairman of the board would be interested in inking that letter and getting that on. Certainly that's become practice here. And if that's not what we want to do, then of course it would have to go to the full board, I would assume.
That's an excellent idea. Amanda, I see your hand waving.
Yep, you have Mr. Diamond too.
I haven't forgotten Jack. Supervisor Hogan.
put forward, I mean, it is already in the budget. We would have, this letter from Senator Little is asking the governor to waive the tax. Unless we're looking to ask the legislature to pass some sort of legislation overriding the 2019-2020 budget. Then, I mean, I'm not opposed to sending a letter to try to get action in the next few days. To have, because we do that, have the chairman send something out quickly.
Supervisor Hogan.
I'm fine with the letter, but I think we can do better than just copying this one.
So is Chairman Thomas in the room?
Yes, please.
Chairman Thomas, would you be amenable to forwarding a letter if we can get one out of this committee in the next couple of days?
I would be more than happy to.
So if it's the pleasure of the committee, as we discussed earlier, Supervisor Brager, Hogan, and Simpson would help draft a letter. And does this committee need to approve it before it goes to Chairman Thomas for release? Anyone have any issues with the three supervisors creating a letter?
No.
Hearing none. So let's move forward with that.
Just a point of clarification. I'm sorry, Mike. Can it just be noted that it's signed by the chairman? I don't think we want to go down that slippery slope of letters going out on behalf of the whole board if there's not a resolution. So
No, we're not suggesting that. I have ghost drafted letters.
Work, Claudia. I just wanted to clarify to, some questions about when letters get sent out. And I'm totally comfortable with it. I just want to make sure it's not a letter signed off from the whole board. But if Frank's comfortable with sending it out, that's great.
From the chairman. Yeah, yes.
Okay, I think we've got that resolved. Supervisor Diamond, some other questions about economic development?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
My comments are that, we've been meeting quite regularly about problems that the Lake George area has been faced during this pandemic reopening. I'd like to hear a little bit more from your subcommittee about what their goals and plans are for other communities, such as the town of Queensbury, the city of Glens Falls, and the remainder towns in Warren County, on how that committee is planning on helping to drive the economy in those areas. I'd also like to hear about those communities in general, about their challenges they're facing during this pandemic crisis in the reopening process. So I'd like to see us, if we're going to meet on a weekly basis, maybe you select a different community every week and have your committee come up with some real plans on how they can help improve the economy in each community and what challenges that they're facing as far as hiring people.
Thank you, Jack. And that is a good idea. As you know, we were originally focused on reopening as much as we could. Now we're trying to maintain and grow. So I will bring that up at our next task force meeting and see if we can figure out how to address that moving forward. Any other questions from supervisors or comments? Hearing none. Don, I know that there's a question from Mr. Dietrich, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there was, but actually he said that Sarah Frankenfeld was able to answer that during her presentation there, so he seems to be all set.
Excellent. Any other questions from the community? Hearing none, what I'd like to open it up is any other discussions before I call a motion to adjourn. Hearing none, I apologize prior to this to all the committees that follow. We'll do better next time. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Bramer, second by Supervisor Leggett. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.